Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Indies Introduced series, where we spotlight debut authors handpicked by booksellers from around the country. In each episode, a bookseller from the Indies Introduced panel will interview the author of a debut title featured in our program.
Hello, everybody. My name is Randy Schiller. I'm a buyer from Left Bank Books in St. Louis. And today I'm here with Molly Olguín, who is a queer writer, educator, and monster aficionado. Her stories have appeared in magazines like Quarterly West and The Normal School. She was the recipient of the 2023 Grace Paley Prize, as well as the Loft Mentor Series Fellowship in 2019. With Jackie Hedeman. She is the creator of the audio drama, The Pasithea Powder. She teaches English and creative writing to high school students in Seattle, Washington. And The Sea Gives Up the Dead, which we're here to discuss today, is her debut collection of short stories. And it goes on sale April 29th. Welcome, Molly.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Randy. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, this is great. Did I leave anything out from your bio? Anything else you'd want to share?
No, I think you got all the big pieces.
All right. You can thank your publisher for that. Okay, just to start off, I guess I have a question that is the obvious question that I did not want to ask. However, when I was doing some research, I thought it would be an interesting, I hope it's an interesting question for everyone, which is, when did you know you wanted to write, and what was your process when you started?
I love this question. So when I was in preschool, I remember they asked all the little kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my answer in preschool was, I want to be a writer, but I know I can't just be a writer, so I'll be like a ballerina or like a famous actress or something to pay the bills. So I really always wanted to be a writer. I think my process when I first started, like, because I'm like, oh, this is something I've had as like a goal and as like a thing that just like is fun and that I wanna do for fun my whole life. I'm like, oh, I was writing stuff as a child, I was writing stuff as a teen, I was, really playing around with a lot of genres. I think when I was like in undergrad and as like a high school student, I spent a lot of time writing plays. And so as a creative writing teacher now, of high school students, I really recommend my students like play around in different genres. I loved plays because I feel like they were really good at teaching me like dialogue, and they were really good at like giving me that sense of narrative arc that I tend to use more now in prose and in fiction.
Oh, that's great. Um, what about screenplays? Do you also write screenplays?
I do also write screenplays, yes. So my writing partner, Jackie Hedeman, and I have a screenplay about Oscar Wilde's horrible evil twink boyfriend, Bosie Douglas, in his old age.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely really fun getting to do that and getting to, yeah, just play around with like, oh, how do you tell a story just with voice and action without that sense of interiority?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Um, I knew that was a good question. I'm just going to pat myself on the back.
You did great.
Thank you. Um, so The Sea Gives Up the Dead. Everyone agreed this is a wonderful book. I absolutely love it. The prose is beautiful. Um, it's very obvious that you've been writing for a long time, um, i.e., that you started as a preschooler knowing you wanted to write. Um, so it sounds kind of oxymoronic to me to say that it was a joy to read, because death is such a theme throughout the book. Um, we all, when we first talked about it, the word joy came out of my mouth, I know, and we all kind of wanted to let everyone know that yes, it's about death, but it's not going to drag you down. um, it's not going to ruin your day, as it were. But I guess I'm wondering why death is something you wanted to explore.
First of all, thank you so much. That is so delightful. I'm so happy it was a joy to read. And I think like I was thinking about this question, and I have like the glib answer, which is like there's a cliche about there's only two constants in life, and death is more interesting than taxes. But I also think like why I'm interested in death is just that it's like the biggest possible change, right? Like death is this change that's going to impact your life because of course you are going to die. But also like it's going to impact your life in a thousand ways. And it's a sense of like this is this essential change that like you just are going to have to deal with a thousand different times in a thousand different ways. Because there's like, like in Seven Deaths, I play around with like what is a death? Like there's like literal death, but there's also like all these different kinds of like losses that like transform your sense of self, that transform your relationships, that transform like how you're going to live your life. And I think transformation is like really fascinating and like fun to write about.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I guess maybe as I start the latter half of my life, death is something I'm finding interesting to contemplate and to think about. So the I'm sorry.
Oh, just yeah, it's
Well,
constant.
the the other thing I kind of was wondering, and this is more of a question about your job as a writing teacher, and but also in reference to the book, specifically the two stories: "The Princess Wants for Company" and "The Sea Gives Up the Dead." Just wondering if you could talk about setting and how important that is, and how you decided on the setting for both of those.
Yes, absolutely. So it's funny you mentioned those two stories because The Seekers of the Dead is one of the only stories in the book not set in Los Angeles. Almost all the stories in the book are set in San Pedro, which is a neighborhood in Los Angeles where I grew up. And one thing that was really fun to me thinking about setting with this book was like, oh, how do I like keep the place mostly the same, but like have like different genres, different historical periods, and like try to kind of play around with like how do you look at like one thing but through all these different lenses. And so I think like with other stories in the book, I'm thinking about like, oh, this is like science fiction, historical fiction, two sides of the same coin. Like we're just looking at the present, we're looking at one place. But with those two stories, I think the for this Princess Wants for Company, what I was interested in was that like 1950s like kind of lesbian pulp novel. Like those ones with the covers where it's like there's the blonde who's like kind of swooning like
Yeah,
dramatically, and then there's the brunette in the turtleneck who looks kind of evil. And like I really just wanted to like kind of play with like, oh, this is like that pulp novel, like that cover image, but like kind of playing with deconstructing the power dynamics of that a little bit. And so that was Rafaela sort of coming into that world. And I think for The Seekers of the Dead, that's one where the setting really gave me the plot. Like I couldn't set it any other time because I was like, I really want to write about that the mother going on the Gold Star voyage after World War One. And it like World War One presents this like the problem that like makes Selma have to face all these things that she's been avoiding about her relationship with her child. And so that you can't take that, I think, out of that setting and still have the same story.
yeah. Well, I totally agree. I mean, any story it seems where someone wants to uh, kind of create their new self, World War One. I'm thinking of African Americans that were treated so differently when they went to France, and
Mm.
so that makes total sense. And um, the the thing
Yeah,
about I did want to say about the Princess Wants Her Company. I kind of it totally came across as the golden age of Hollywood. That was really kind of easy to feel, and that pulp piece of it too. Um, the and also I just wanted to mention that you cover a couple, several different themes it seems in that, and it's a short story, but they all work and come together. Kind of the Latina experience, uh, the desire and infatuation, as well as kind of you really feel the entitlement of this family. Are those just a product of the story itself, or were those things you wanted to talk about?
oh my gosh. Yes, I think is the answer to that. I think I always like write a story just from a sense of, oh, what's the most interesting choice for the story? And also all the things you mentioned are things I'm really interested in talking about. Um, with this book, a lot of the stories sort of have these little seeds, like germinating from like family stories. Like a lot of these stories begin as like little family fairy tales that then become these like sort of broader queer fairy tales. The Princess Wants for Company is the one that is least grounded in a specific story from like my family, but it is really grounded in like I think two experiences like from my youth. So as a child I lived in San Pedro and I remember driving from like San Pedro into like Rancho Palos Verdes and that's like San Pedro is a very working class town. Rancho Palos Verdes is a very like rolling hills and everything's green and there's like horses on like a white picket fence path and it just felt like oh th this is very different from like the glisten of the concrete ground that I just was driving past
Yeah.
it. And that like entering into a new class space was something I was really interested in. And then the baby of it all, I think, is also drawn from life. So I was a camp counselor as a teenager, and because I was tall and looked responsible, they put me in charge of the babies, even though I was very not qualified to do that. I remember just this feeling of like deep frustration and like fear, but also like trying to like treat every baby as like a little individual person and like realizing like, oh, it's possible to just like have a personality clash with a baby because they're a person the same way that like an adult is a person.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And I think like the investigation of like queer desires and like the Latina identity is just I'm trying to write about people like myself and my family.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I love that story. I reread it over the weekend. I love the dragons, which are such a big piece of it, but at the same time don't make much of a. The presence is always there, I guess, but kind of in the background. But
Totally.
love that story. Love
Thank
that
you.
story. Yeah. Um, Another thing I feel like this, the Sea Gives Up the Dead, I think, is the best example for me, which is the power that a reader is able to get empathy and learn empathy through reading. And is that something you think about as a writer when you're working?
So I don't feel like I think very much about the reader's sense of empathy while writing because I try not to think about the reader at all while writing because if I did, I would be way too terrified to
Yeah.
write anything down.
Yeah.
But I do think about empathy while writing because I feel like it's my job as a writer to have empathy for all the characters, even the ones who behave really, really badly. And so like in these stories, I have a lot of characters who I think I have some fundamental sympathy for, even though like they're sort of villains, right? Like I think in a lot of ways, like the parents in The Seekers of the Dead behave pretty badly. And or like Roque in Seven Deaths also a pretty bad dad. But like
Yeah.
I hope, like I'm rendering them in such a way that like you can have sympathy for them even as you're like, oh, like these are people who are making bad choices and who are causing harm to the characters that I might have an easier sympathy for. Like I think it's easy for me to be really sympathetic to the kids in Seven Deaths and then like thinking about like that bad dad and that bad husband. I'm like, oh, but he is also like, I don't know, he's really fun and like I like him even though he is terrible.
Oh, that's great. The so I, the Undertaker's dogs. I think about Isabel a lot, and
Yeah.
about I don't know if it's just particular to me, but having to deal with the death of puppies, um, I could see that being a struggle. And so when I think about when you mention as a writer having empathy or sympathy for your characters, as a reader, I felt like a lot of empathy for her. Having to go through that experience.
I love that so much. She's trying her best. It's not always great, but
Yeah,
she's trying her best.
yeah, you totally can tell that too, and I would not have done as well uh, personally, but okay, great, thank you. Then I'm sticking with The Sea Gives Up the Dead because it's such a great story. It's obviously Selma's story, but in a lot of ways, well, not a lot of ways, but like after I finished it, especially the second time, I kind of played it in reverse in my head and realized that it felt like you're getting Eddie's perspective somewhat too. I don't know if that um, is something. I don't know. I just felt that way, and also felt like wanting maybe to know more about who she is. And I'm just wondering if you've got more, uh, if Eddie's a character you want to write more about, or you have written more about.
I love this question so much because it's a writing prompt, and so now I get to take it away and consider
Oh,
Eddie's story a little bit. So genuinely, thank you for that. I think I will go contemplate that. The answer is like I had always thought of the story as being Selma's story, and it's actually because this is one of the stories that is very firmly grounded in one of my family stories. So I found out that my great grandmother did one of those Gold Star voyages, and I asked like family members about it and found this letter that my great grandfather wrote to his other son saying, "Hey, your brother died of the flu. And by the way, you should come home for Thanksgiving." And so that letter that appears in the story is actually the exact verbatim letter that my
oh
grandfather.
wow,
And I was so curious. Weirdly, I find that letter very heartbreaking. But I find what made me curious wasn't the grandfather, but like the mother, like the person who like is sort of absent from like that expression of grief, but who then gets to go on this journey to try and find like her child who's gone. And so it was always like very like that was the seed of the story for me was trying to imagine this woman's experience, and then the rest of it obviously is made up because you know.
sure,
uh I think Eddie's story in her own right is like it's a really like interesting story to imagine just from her perspective. Like she is also undergoing this tremendous transformation in that she gets to if Selma has to Eddie gets to decide what she's willing to sacrifice in order to be herself, and the answer is like everything, all of her relationships, like all of her resources, just like her entire life in order to like live as herself. And that is a really brave thing to do, and I am curious about her now that you mention it, so thank you.
oh good, good. I love that story. Um, Also, I guess I have one more question about it, and I can't remember if she was named or not, but the woman Selma speaks with on the ship.
Yeah.
Um, is that death? I mean, that's kind of like what I thought it might be at first, but then obviously that's not where it leads. Um, Kind of a metaphorical
Okay.
death, maybe, but
Oh, I love that so much, the idea that she's death. Oh, okay. Okay, so it is ambiguous in the story. Like you're I think it's up to interpretation who you want to envision that woman as. I love it if you think she's death. I will tell you my answer, but I want to like couch it in like, this is my answer. It doesn't have to be your answer necessarily. So to me, she is the Virgin Mary.
ah,
Because I try to like put like a lot of like references to like Guadalupe in there. Like the ship that she sails on is the Guadalupe, and like she's I don't know, to me the image of like the blue shawl with like the halo of like sun behind her is very like
yeah,
Guadalupe. Um, I read this amazing book in grad school called Madonnas That Maim, and it was about these images of the Virgin Mary appearing to yell at you. Like she appears like, and she's like, there's these stories from like the Renaissance and earlier where the Virgin Mary appears and then she like will break your legs and be like, you all are full of sin, build me a chapel. Or she'll like appear and she'll be like, I have sent a plague, build me a chapel and also repent of your sins. And I love this idea of like a Virgin Mary who appears in sort of this cruel way almost and like forces you to like uh become a better person, make a better choice, or at least gives you the choice of doing those things.
yeah.
And you know,
Kind of feels worse than death in a way.
maybe yes.
Well, great. I love the book. I think we all did. It's one. There were just a handful of books where we kind of, as we started discussing it, when we started reading it, it was just kind of, yeah, we're going to keep reading this, and then everyone loved it so much we really didn't have to talk about it much, which was an interesting part of this process. But anything else you want to share or add about it or about your writing?
No, thank you so much. That means so much to me. I'm so excited that you liked the book. I'm excited for people to read it. So thank you.
Yeah, I think people are going to love it.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!